Next, let's look at the surprising science showing how you can actually reshape this inner narrator and even influence how your story is written on a biological level. Neuroplasticity and epigenetics, editing the autobiography in real time. Neuroplasticity is the ability of the brain to change and adapt throughout life by forming new neural connections. This means the brain is not fixed but can be reorganized in response to learning, experience, or even injury. Epigenetics is the study of changes in gene expression that are caused by factors other than alterations in the DNA sequence itself. These changes can be influenced by environment, lifestyle, and experiences, suggesting that how we live can affect which genes are turned on or off. Here's something incredible to consider. The voice in your head is not fixed. It's editable. The story it tells can be rewritten, not just psychologically, but biologically. For centuries, we were taught that the brain is like concrete. It's set early and doesn't change. But today, science says otherwise. Your mind is more like clay, shaped daily by what you think, feel, eat, and even believe. Norman Doidge's remarkable book, The Brain That Changes Itself. Norman Doidge is a psychiatrist, psychoanalyst, and author. In The Brain That Changes Itself, he popularized the science of neuroplasticity through compelling stories of individuals who have retrained their brains to overcome various challenges, demonstrating the brain's remarkable capacity for change. Norman Doidge's remarkable book, The Brain That Changes Itself, brings us directly into the world of neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to rewire itself throughout life. New neural pathways can be formed with intention, repetition, and awareness, which means the mental narrator you hear on loop, especially the one filled with self-doubt, fear, or shame, can be softened, reshaped, and even replaced. Every time you catch a thought and choose a new one, you're not just thinking differently, you're sculpting your brain differently, and it goes deeper. Epigenetics, the study of how behaviors and environment can affect how genes express themselves, reveals that even our biology responds to awareness. Andrew Weil is an American physician and author known for his work in integrative medicine, which combines conventional and alternative therapies. He emphasizes the interconnectedness of mind, body, and spirit, and promotes lifestyle interventions like diet, exercise, and mindfulness for health and well-being. Andrew Weil's integrative medicine approach combines this cutting-edge science with ancient healing systems. He shows how diet, movement, breathwork, and meditation don't just help you feel better. They can literally switch on and off certain genes. Your inner voice is wired into your nervous system, and that nervous system responds to lifestyle, not just thoughts. Meditation, for instance, isn't just spiritual fluff. It's now one of the most well-researched practices in neuroscience. Long-term mindfulness practice has been shown to increase gray matter density in areas of the brain related to self-regulation and compassion, while reducing activity in the default mode network. Mindfulness practice is a mental training practice that involves focusing your attention on the present moment without judgment. This can include meditation, mindful breathing, or simply bringing non-judgmental awareness to everyday activities. That's the one creating that mental narrator in the first place. In essence, mindfulness turns the volume down on the ego and up on the silent witness. Daniel Goleman's work on emotional intelligence adds another dimension: emotional literacy. Our ability to name, track, and shift our inner state teaches us that we don't have to control every thought, but we can influence their likelihood, like changing the climate in a room to make storms less common. Through awareness, you're actually influencing the probability field of your thoughts. Daniel Goleman is an American psychologist and science journalist. He is best known for his work on emotional intelligence, the ability to recognize, understand, and manage one's own emotions, as well as recognize, understand, and influence the emotions of others. This is why awareness practices matter. Simple things like cyclic sighing, chakra-focused breathing, even eating in silence aren't just rituals. They are neurobiological interventions. You are literally rewriting the conditions of your consciousness, and with time, that internal voice begins to speak in a new tone, gentler, clearer, truer. So the next time you think, I am just this way, remember the story can be edited. The narrator can be retrained. The brain can change its voice. And in doing so, you begin to change not just your thoughts, but your entire reality. Now let's stretch that even further. What happens when the narrator is turned off completely? When the self isn't just questioned, but disappears entirely? Chakras are energy centers in the body, according to various Eastern spiritual traditions, particularly Hinduism and Buddhism. Chakra-focused breathing involves directing breath and awareness to specific points in the body associated with these energy centers, often as a meditative or energy balancing practice. Neurobiological interventions are practices or treatments that affect the brain and nervous system on a biological level, such as breathwork influencing the vagus nerve. Welcome to the strange frontier of altered states, shattered mirrors, psychedelics, lucid dreaming, and past life windows. Psychedelics are a class of psychoactive substances that can produce profound alterations in perception, mood, and cognitive processes, sometimes leading to experiences described as mystical or spiritual, including the dissolution of the sense of self. Lucid dreaming is a state of dreaming in which the dreamer is aware that they are dreaming. In lucid dreams, the dreamer may gain some level of control over the dream's narrative and environment. Have you ever woken up from a dream so vivid, so emotionally intense, that it took you a moment to remember who you were? That eerie space between dreaming and waking offers a clue to something deeper. Your sense of self is not as permanent as it feels. In fact, under certain conditions, it can disappear entirely. And what emerges instead can be shocking, terrifying, or transcendent. In Breaking Open the Head, Daniel Pinchbeck recounts his initiation into the world of plant medicine, particularly through ayahuasca ceremonies. These ancient rituals, practiced in the Amazon for generations, aren't recreational. They are spiritual surgeries, and what many participants report is astonishingly consistent. The sudden absence of the I. The voice is gone. Daniel Pinchbeck is an American author and journalist interested in psychedelics, shamanism, and consciousness. In Breaking Open the Head, he recounts his personal explorations with various psychedelic substances and indigenous plant medicines, reflecting on their potential to alter consciousness and perception of reality. Ayahuasca is a potent psychoactive brew traditionally used by indigenous peoples of the Amazon basin for spiritual and healing purposes. Ayahuasca ceremonies are ritualistic gatherings led by a shaman or facilitator where participants drink the brew to induce altered states of consciousness. The narrator silenced. What remains is pure perception, raw awareness, or in some cases, contact with something entirely beyond ordinary consciousness. Bruce Goldberg's work on regression therapy opens yet another strange doorway. His patients under hypnosis report memories not just from childhood, but from lives they have no way of remembering. Stories that unfold with detail, emotional texture, and deep personal insight. Whether or not one believes in literal past lives, these altered states reveal a truth that modern psychology is just beginning to grapple with. The ego is not the only mode of self. It's one mask among many. Bruce Goldberg is an American hypnotherapist and author known for his work in past life regression therapy. He claims to help patients access memories of previous lives through hypnosis, suggesting that consciousness or aspects of the self may persist beyond a single lifetime. Robert Monroe was an American businessman who founded the Monroe Institute, known for its research into altered states of consciousness. He developed audio technologies, such as HemiSync, to facilitate out-of-body experiences and explore non-ordinary states of awareness. Robert Monroe's pioneering research into out-of-body experiences at his Virginia-based lab pushes this even further. Using sound frequencies to trigger altered states, Monroe discovered that consciousness can function without the body and without identity. In those states, the internal monologue doesn't just quiet down, it ceases, and what's revealed in its place is often described as archetypal or even transpersonal, a field of awareness that feels ancient, non-local, and intimately connected to all things. Jungian perspective means relating to the theories of Carl Jung, a Swiss psychiatrist and the founder of analytical psychology. The Jungian perspective emphasizes the importance of the unconscious mind, archetypes, universal symbolic patterns, and the process of individuation, psychological development towards a whole self. Carl Jung was a Swiss psychiatrist who was initially a close associate of Sigmund Freud, but later developed his own theories. He introduced concepts such as the collective unconscious, archetypes, the anima and animus, and psychological types. From a Jungian perspective, these experiences aren't hallucinations. They're encounters with the collective unconscious, a realm where personal identity dissolves and deeper archetypes rise to the surface. Carl Jung called these symbols the language of the soul, and they show up in dreams, visions, and psychedelic journeys. Sometimes the voice in your head isn't yours or even human. Sometimes it's a fragment of the divine wearing a symbolic mask. What's fascinating is how these altered states, ayahuasca journeys, lucid dreams, deep hypnosis, consistently report the same thing. The self is not fixed. It's more like a tuning dial. Turn it slightly, and you're someone else. Turn it further, and there is no one left. Just a witnessing field, observing experience with no need to explain it. This isn't about escaping reality. It's about expanding the model. Your ordinary self, your ego, your inner chatter. It's one version of you, but it's not the only version. And in learning to access these other states, you begin to loosen the grip of the default voice in your head. The next question becomes, what happens when you stop trying to rise above the body and instead sink into it, fully conscious, only with reverence? That's where true witnessing begins. In stillness, in silence, in the flesh. Let's step into that now. Embodied silence, somatic pathways to the witness. Embodied silence is a state of stillness and presence experienced not just mentally, but throughout the physical body. It suggests a form of awareness that is rooted in somatic sensation rather than solely in thought. Somatic pathways refers to the nervous system pathways that relate to the body, soma, including sensory input from the body and motor control. Somatic practices engage these pathways to influence physical and emotional states. It's tempting to think awakening happens somewhere above the neck, through thoughts, revelations, or insights that click. But some of the deepest shifts don't come from thinking at all. They come from sensing, from grounding, from silence that rises up not in the head, but in the body. And this is where many seekers miss the mark. You don't transcend the ego by escaping the body. You transcend it by going through the body. In The Body Keeps the Score, Bessel van der Kolk explains how trauma, memory, and identity are stored in our physical tissues, often beyond the reach of thought. The inner voice you hear, especially in moments of stress or self-sabotage, might not just be a psychological habit. It might be an echo of unprocessed physical memory. Your nervous system remembers what your mind forgets. And often what feels like a gut instinct is actually a trigger wrapped in the language of survival. But this embodied memory also contains the keys to awakening. Bessel van der Kolk is a Dutch-born American psychiatrist and researcher specializing in post-traumatic stress. In The Body Keeps the Score, he explains how trauma is stored not just in the mind but in the body, affecting physiology, emotions, and the sense of self, and explores various somatic therapies for healing. Taoist internal alchemy is a set of Taoist practices that aim to cultivate and transform internal energies, QI, to achieve physical health, longevity, and spiritual immortality. It often involves meditation, breathwork, and visualization focused on energy centers in the body. In Taoist internal alchemy, awareness is centered in the dantian, a point below the navel where energy and stillness converge. Tai Chi is a Chinese martial art practiced for both its defense training and its health benefits. It involves slow, flowing movements and deep breathing, emphasizing balance, relaxation, and the cultivation of internal energy. Qigong is a traditional Chinese practice that involves coordinating slow-flowing movement, deep rhythmic breathing, and calm meditative states. Like Tai Chi, it is practiced for exercise, healing, and meditation, aiming to cultivate and balance life energy. QI. Metaphorical means using language or concepts to represent something else symbolically rather than literally. In this video's context, it distinguishes between a concept that is purely symbolic versus one that has a physiological or observable basis. Vagus nerve is the longest nerve in the autonomic nervous system. It plays a crucial role in regulating various bodily functions, including heart rate, digestion, and breathing, and is strongly linked to emotional regulation and the body's stress response. Tai Chi, Qigong, and other somatic practices use this center as a way to anchor consciousness below mental chatter. And this isn't metaphorical. Modern neuroscience confirms that vagal tone, the responsiveness of the vagus nerve, is directly linked to emotional regulation, calm, and the capacity for present moment awareness. When you breathe slowly, when you move mindfully, when you touch stillness inside the body, you shift the entire landscape of your consciousness. This is why chakra work isn't just esoteric, it's anatomical. Focusing on the heart chakra, for example, activates coherence between heart rhythms and brain waves, a state measurable through HeartMath Institute research. When you practice breathwork into these energy centers, you aren't just feeling spiritual, you're retraining your internal dialogue at the level of the nervous system. Prem Rawat offers a beautiful invitation. Lean into the gap, that space between thoughts. That's where the silent witness lives. And often the doorway to that gap isn't mental, it's somatic. It might appear when you pause before reacting, when you soften your jaw, when you feel your feet instead of following a spiral of thought. The mind loves abstraction, but the body is always now, always real. This is why practices like yoga, tai chi, walking meditation, and even simple grounding rituals are so powerful. They reintroduce you to a consciousness that doesn't speak in words, that doesn't need a narrator, a consciousness that simply is. When you return to this silent presence, something shifts. You begin to notice the voice in your head as a voice, not as you. And that moment of distinction, that's the crack in the illusion. That's where freedom breathes. HeartMath Institute is an organization that conducts research and develops tools and techniques to help people reduce stress and improve emotional well-being by increasing coherence between heart rhythms and brain waves. Prem Rawat is a spiritual teacher who speaks about finding peace and fulfillment within oneself. His message often focuses on the importance of self-knowledge and the possibility of experiencing peace in the present moment, often referred to as the gap between thoughts. Let's keep unraveling. What if even your sense of individuality isn't just yours, but a reflection of the people, energies, and networks around you? Let's explore the collective voice behind the personal one. We space, social neuroscience, and the networked self. We space is a term used in some relational or collective spiritual and psychological contexts to describe the shared field of awareness or consciousness that exists between individuals when they are in genuine connection or resonance with each other. Social neuroscience is an interdisciplinary field that studies how biological systems implement social processes and behavior. It combines methods from neuroscience and social psychology to understand the neural mechanisms underlying social interaction. The networked self is the idea that the individual sense of self is not isolated but is deeply interconnected with and influenced by the social networks, relationships, and collective consciousness it is a part of. So far, we've looked closely at the mind's voice, at how thoughts arise, disappear, and repeat. But here's something even more astonishing. Your thoughts might not be entirely yours at all. In fact, much of what plays in your head is shaped, echoed, and reinforced by the people around you. You're not just a single node of awareness, you're part of a living network. In the book Connected, Christakis and James Fowler reveal how our emotions, behaviors, and even health patterns ripple through social webs. If your friend's friend is anxious, you're more likely to feel anxious, even if you've never met that person. Our brains are constantly syncing with others through what neuroscientists call mirror neurons. These are the biological roots of empathy, the reason we wince when someone gets hurt or smile when a baby laughs. But they also suggest something deeper. We are never truly thinking alone. Christakis and James Fowler are social scientists known for their research on social networks. In Connected, they explore how everything from happiness and obesity to political views and altruism can spread through social ties, demonstrating the profound influence of our social connections. Susan Blackmore is a British psychologist and writer, known for her work on consciousness, memes, and parapsychology. She is a proponent of memetics, the theory that ideas and cultural practices spread like biological genes. Susan Blackmore, in her work on memes and consciousness, goes even further. She proposes that thoughts spread like viruses, not just through conversation, but through culture itself. Your beliefs, catchphrases, inner criticisms, even your dreams, can be influenced by the dominant memes of your environment. The voice in your head might be partially authored by the internet, by TikTok trends, by political hashtags, by YouTube comments. We're not only sharing content, we're sharing identity blueprints. Now, add to this the perspective of liberation theology, especially thinkers like Cornel West. He challenges the idea that awakening is solely an individual task. In his view, true liberation of the self is bound to the liberation of the collective. In other words, you're not free until we are free, and that includes freeing each other from internalized voices that uphold shame, oppression, and division. Cornel West is an American philosopher, political activist, social critic, and author. His work often integrates elements of Christianity, philosophy, and political radicalism, emphasizing issues of race, justice, and the struggle for liberation. Much of our inner dialogue, especially around worth, guilt, and value, is shaped by the systems we live in. Questioning those voices is a political act, a spiritual act, and a relational one. This interconnectedness doesn't mean your voice is irrelevant. It means it's part of a choir. What we think of as personal consciousness is often group consciousness in disguise. The I in your mind might be carrying the voices of your ancestors, your community, your culture, and your social network, all woven into what feels like a solitary inner dialogue. The implication is both humbling and empowering. Humbling because it reveals how susceptible we are to suggestion. Empowering because once you recognize this, you can choose who and what you're tuning into. You can consciously shape your inner ecosystem. Surround yourself with people, practices, and environments that speak in the frequency of truth, presence, and compassion. Understanding the networked self is key, but what happens when technology enters the picture? Our exploration continues in part 3, where we look at VR, AI, and the post-human witness. That's linked right here. If you're just joining, I highly recommend starting from the beginning in part 1 to get the full context. Thank you for watching, subscribing, and contributing to this conversation with your likes and comments. Click now to go deeper.